I see.
Increase in oil.
What's killing us to buy? I got this your antenna. I don't know. So this thing will affect you.
The deputy chairman, honorable colleagues, invited guests. The deputy, invited guests. My name is Ali Papa.
Let me stand on the existing protocol. Distinguished leaders and representatives of DAPMAN, IPMAN, and MOMAN, esteemed members of this great committee, gentlemen of the press, I welcome you all on behalf of the House of Representative Committee on Petroleum Resources Downstream to this important gathering. We are here today not to interrogate, not to accuse, and not to put anyone on trial. We are here to listen. We are here to talk to one another as partners who share one common destiny. In Nigeria, where energy is affordable, where supply is stable, and where no citizen is made to suffer for products that should ordinarily be within reach. For too long, this relationship between the National Assembly and the men and women who move fuel from vessel to depot, from depot to station, and from station to the ordinary Nigerian has been conducted at a distance. We have read about you in the news. We have heard about your struggles in reports. We have debated your challenges in our chambers, often without you in the room to speak for yourself. That era ends today. This committee has resolved that no policy affecting the downstream sector will be shaped in the dark. We cannot regulate what we do not understand, and we cannot understand what we have not heard directly from those who live it every single day. That is why we have summoned you not to a hearing, but to a conversation. That is why this room is small, deliberately, so that we can speak plainly and hear plainly without the theater that sometimes accompanies large engagements. Nigeria stands at a defining moment in her energy history. Domestic refining capacity is growing. Importation dynamics are shifting. Pipeline security remains a national priority. And through it all, you, the marketers, the depot owners, the independent operators, and the major players are the bridge between policy and the pump. When that bridge is strong, Nigeria feels it in a stable prices and steady supply. When that bridge is strained, the whole nation feels it too. So today, We ask you to speak freely. Tell us where importation regulation help you and where they hurt you. Tell us what domestic refining truly means for your businesses and for the millions of Nigerians who depend on you. Tell us plainly, how do we resolve the tension that keeps coming up between independent domestic refiners and importers? Tell us about how to resolve those issues surrounding issues of import license vis-a-vis domestic refining. Tell us what has worked, what has failed, and what this committee must do differently. We are prepared to listen with open minds and to act with open hearts, guided only by national interests. We are committed to amending existing legislation, drafting solution legislation that will protect national domestic interests and remove all areas of dispute and tension. We desire to hear from you on a sustainable solution on and win-win basis that will help both domestic refining, importation, and also how we can secure energy security where all players can benefit. We are committed towards a well-defined and clear legislation in a bid to resolve all issues to ensure stability. A technical committee is drafting the legislation and amendment. This meeting is to find a solution that have national interest and competitive business practices at its core. Let it be said from this day forward that this committee chose partnership over suspicion, dialogue over decree, understanding over assumption. Let it be said that when the history of Nigerian downstream sector reform is written, this briefing session marked the moment when marketers and lawmakers stopped talking past each other and started building the future together. I therefore, in conclusion, urge every representative in this room to speak boldly, to speak honestly, and to speak in the interest of the Nigerian people we ultimately serve. This committee is ready, Nigeria is watching, and history is waiting to be made, not by any one of us alone, but by all of us together. I thank you, and once again welcome you to this session. And I must add that other stakeholders like the NNDPRA, the domestic refining groups, and other stakeholders will also be meeting with this committee before we come to a final decision. Thank you, and God bless. Thank you so much. Let me appreciate my distinguished honorable colleagues for making our time, even though we are on recess, to be here at this phase of this interaction. And also thank in a special way the leadership of Dapman, Moman, Ipman. While we are having the conversation, the president of Petron came in, but he's not for this session. He will be appearing when the regulators and other groups are coming. And to our distinguished guest, this is the phase of our interaction. We'll be meeting with the regulator, the NNDPRA, NUPRC, and the refiners, both the modular refinery owners and the big-time refinery owners, and also with MPA and other regulatory bodies, both CBN, on the issues that have been raised. Because this will form part of our downstream reform, both for the amendment of the PIA and for the motions that will move on some of the issues that need to be corrected. And that is why we needed to meet with you people. So, and also, we have taken a special note of the issue you raised on the issue of dollar-denominated charges by the Nigerian Ports Authority. And just like our colleague Siri said, that it's not good for the economy that at this point that the FS market have stabilized, that we should be charging people who are dealing with domestic downstream activities in dollar. That affects the pump price of the PMS. So that we have also taken note of. We've also taken note of what you said about the lopsidedness in the issuance of the import license, where you talked about both the first quarter, second quarter, and third quarter was given to a particular set of people. Those questions, we're going to raise it when NNDPRA comes here to find out on how to arrive at the parameters they use in issuing those licenses. So we looked at all those issues, and then the one that has to do with the safe transport corridor will also take up with the Ministry of Works on how to ensure that the corridors for transportation is safe and accessible for those who are dealing in transportation of those petroleum products. And also, one other issue that will ask you people to help us, maybe when you are submitting your additional submissions, is that because we are looking for solutions. One, this issue of domestic refining and importation is issues that we should not shy away from. First of all, how do we protect and encourage owners of domestic refineries? And how do we also protect and the business of importation in terms of, are we going to continue importing the way we have been importing before the coming of these refineries, knowing fully well that more refineries are coming up? So in a matter of 4, 5, 10 years, we may have up to big 5 or 6 refineries. So now, and then how do we ensure national energy security in terms of backup, like you said, in case if there's any issues with our refineries, that the countries can continue to run smoothly without any problem. So you need to submit to this committee an honest suggestion of, it mustn't be an immediate solution, but how do we find a balance between these issues? Because yes, these refineries are coming up, we must accept that. And also these marketers, what they like to have built infrastructures over the years, we must also accept that. So how do we, as we are having these refineries, either have a system whereby those who are into the business of refining must find a relationship with marketers in terms of how to build a chain that continue to sustain their businesses. And then the marketers must also find a way that we cannot continue to import the volume that we used to import before the coming of this refinery. So we now agree, how do we now find a middle ground of this is what should be imported at any given time as a matter of national energy security to protect the country and immune it from crisis. But we can't run away, because this is the reason why there have been these tensions over and over again. So we have to look at these issues, and we're banking on the deep knowledge you people have in industry to say, okay, this is the transition process, this is how it's going to be in terms of the relationship that should exist between owners of domestic refineries and marketers, and the future status of importation, how it can be regulated. These issues are very important to this committee, and want to propose those motions and legislation that will help to resolve it before the end of this our assembly. So it's very important that you guide us in providing those information. So when we now hear from the NNPCA, both from the NNDPRA and other stakeholders, we'll get back to you people before we now make a decision as a committee. So on that note, I want to thank our distinguished guests for making our time to come here, and also appreciate my colleagues who made contribution for making our time to come here. Thank you all.
Of Nigeria, DAPMAN, I would like to express DAPMAN's appreciation to the House of Representatives Committee on Petroleum Resources Downstream for this invitation and the opportunity to express our opinion on issues pertaining to the Nigerian downstream petroleum sector, such as the general challenges currently confronting marketers in the downstream sector, issues relating to importation regulations and their impact on operations, issues relating to domestic refining, including engagement with local refineries and its effect on supply and pricing, and other matters that DAPMAN consider relevant to a full and informed understanding of the sector by the committee. May I crave the indulgence of the chairman and the committee? I have already produced 15 copies of this, which has been given to the secretary. So it's an 11-page presentation, which I will not run through everything, but I will scan through. By way of introduction, the Depot and Petroleum Products Marketers Association of Nigeria, DAPMAN, is an association made up of private business entities in Nigeria, in Nigeria's midstream and downstream oil and gas sector. The association consists of depot owners and petroleum products bulk marketers and retailers involved in the supply, sourced locally or via importation, storage, distribution, and sale of refined petroleum products in Nigeria. Collectively, we seek to unite members and assist the government in the formulation of good good policies for the benefit of the economy and the Nigerian public generally. DAPMA members are key players in ensuring fuel availability across the country. Since the establishment of the first private depots in 1998, members have collectively improved, sustained, and strengthened Nigeria's energy infrastructure, supporting fuel importation, storage, and distribution capabilities. The 37 financial members of the association consist predominantly of key private sector operators who own bulk storage facilities, tank farm, petroleum distribution infrastructure, retail outlets, and licenses to import and distribute products like PMS, diesel, aviation turbine kerosene. I'm going to skip part of it in case you have the copies. I'm on page 3 now. The general challenges currently confronting marketers in the downstream sector. It is fundamental for depot operators to operate profitably on the aggregate in order to have funds to reinvest in the operations and sustain maintenance of their various depots. Such profits stem from a level playing field, a structured trading environment where even with a one-source supplier, depot operators can, based on the transparency of the regulatory guidelines, project a positive outcome for their trading operations. From the records of the regulator, NMDPRA, a staggered number of not less than 72 out of the 154 depots nationwide had no regular or consistent trading activity in the last 1 year. That is to tell you that they are just paying salaries and they are not doing any trading activity. This was primarily due to the uneven playing field, incessant trading activity losses, single source supply environment, and inability to secure an alternative source of supply rather than a lack of interest or capacity. Storage capacity has value only where it remains serviceable, accessible, connected to viable evacuation routes. A facility that cannot receive product competitively, cannot finance inventory, cannot load safely, or cannot reach its customers will not provide the supply security benefit which its nameplate capacity may suggest. Nigeria's downstream petroleum distribution system is built almost entirely on road haulage, and this is at present our most dangerous structural vulnerability. Petroleum tanker accidents on Nigerian highways caused by overloaded or aging vehicles, untrained or fatigued drivers, or poorly maintained roads endanger lives and result in significant loss of lives and property every year. Long-distance truck haulage from coastal depots add substantially to the landed cost of fuel at every point in the supply chain, particularly inland and northern states, increasing inefficiency and cost. A single road closure, weight restriction, flooding event, or security incident on a key route can disrupt supply to an entire region for days, making supply chain fragile. As domestic refining output grows and national demand increases, the trucking model cannot absorb the additional volume without significant safety costs and congestion consequences. The Nigerian downstream petroleum sector, and indeed all Nigerians, welcomed the commencement of the operations by the Dangote Refinery and had looked forward to the nation finally becoming self-sufficient through the refining capacity and capabilities of the new mega refinery. Our experience, and indeed that of the nation, have been that of mixed feelings, bordering on almost total monopoly of the supply of premium motor spirit or PMS by the mega refinery. As enshrined in PIA 2021, the sector is fully deregulated, and as such, prices of petroleum products are determined by the interplay of the free market parameters. However, we dare say that this has not been the experience, as we noted several drops towards the end of last year and few within the first half of 2026. The mega refinery had announced and enforced prices outside the influences of the interplay of market forces, and this should not be allowed to continue. Issues relating to importation regulations and their impact on operations. We have noted the efforts of the regulator, the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority, in their quest to provide against shortfalls in local refining volumes to meet required country needs. They had issued petroleum products import allocation slots and volumes to the same set of marketers in Q1 2026, the same set of marketers in Q2 2026, and the same set of marketers in Q3 2026, as if all other players in the sector are neither capable nor qualified. This is totally unacceptable. This is totally unacceptable to other players in the sector, and we would implore this esteemed committee to intervene and cause the regulator, the NMDPRA, to exhibit greater transparency and fairness in future fuel imports allocations. In case you have the copy, I'm going to skip to the next page. Issues relating to domestic refining, including engagement with local refineries and the effect on supply and pricing. As recent as 2 weeks ago, the management of our mega refinery in Lekki unilaterally and without consultation with any other players suspended loading of petroleum products via trucks from its gantries. This came after the refinery had earlier suspended coastal offtakes via ships. The suspension and the stoppage would have had very dire consequences for the nation had the import option been non-existent, which allowed for import permits to stave off the probability of serious supply shortfalls in fuel supplies. In essence, and to avoid the embarrassing fuel queues from rearing its head again, the import option, as enshrined in the PIA 2021, must be transparently executed and adhered to by all stakeholders. All domestic refineries should be encouraged to work with private depot operators on transparent, commercially sustainable, and mutually beneficial coastal and inland supply arrangements. DAPMAN has engaged and will continue to engage the refinery management on trading and offtake service arrangements. The committee should encourage structured engagement, transparent nomination and allocation processes, and adequate advance notice of product availability excuse me, so that depots can plan inventory, financing, and distribution properly. I'm going to jump to number 4. Other matters that DAPMAN considered relevant to a full and informed understanding of the sector by the committee. Beyond working capital constraints, depot operators face a range of specific operational and regulatory obstacles that increase costs, reduce reliability, and discourage investment. Key issues: shallow waterways and channel restrictions. Fewer than 20 of the 154 depots, of the 154 licensed depots, can receive ocean-going vessels carrying in excess of 25,000 tons of petroleum products due to draft restrictions in the channel serving the major depot clusters. These include the Apapa and Ijegun channels in Lagos, Ogara, Calabar, Mbo, Port Harcourt, Warri, Escravos, and Cocoa Axis. Operators are forced to lighter their cargoes using smaller daughter vessels rather than co-loading to accommodate larger volumes and improve efficiency. Inadequate pilotage and towage services. The Nigerian Ports Authority is statutorily responsible for the provision of pilotage and towage services. In practice, prepaid stockboats assignments frequently fail to materialize. That is when NPA gives us a tugboat. Even though we are paid for it, these tugboats don't show up, forcing depot operators to hire independent vessels at additional cost, causing loading delays and demurrage exposures. duplicated and foreign currency denominated port charges. DAPMAN members, and indeed all marketers, continue to report duplicated charges on fuel-laden vessels engaged in purely domestic liftings and discharge operations, particularly on vessels lifting products from the Dangote Lekki Refinery for delivery to other locations within Nigeria. Marketers are invoiced for loading operations at the refinery and again at the discharge port. More critically, certain charges continue to be enforced in US dollars, despite the entirely domestic nature of these transactions. This practice persists, notwithstanding a presidential directive conveyed by the late Chief of Staff, Malam Abba Kyari, to the then Minister of Transportation, Right Honorable Rotimi Amechi, directing the suspension of foreign exchange denominated billings for local operations. The directive appears not to have been implemented. DAPMAN respectfully urges the committee to direct the relevant authorities to enforce compliance with this directive. And from this point on, what we have are recommendations and suggestions to resolve this issue. DAPMAN strongly supports policies that will encourage the establishment and sustained operation of more local refineries capable of producing PMS and other petroleum products. Domestic refining and local value addition should remain preferred foundation of Nigeria's supply system. However, domestic refining, however successful, cannot by itself guarantee nationwide fuel availability without a functioning depot, storage, and distribution network to move the product from the refinery gate to the consumers across the 36 states of the country. Excuse me. The two must coexist and be supported together. Compliant import options should therefore remain available as regulated balancing and contingency mechanism where there is refinery maintenance, outage, product quality issue, allocation delay, logistics bottleneck, port disruption, or any period in which domestic supply is inefficient. We strongly recommend the introduction and implementation of a competitive market framework supported by relevant sections of the PIA, including Section 32, Section 182, Section 184, Section 205, 211, 212, that ensure the continuous survival of the market. DAPMAN implores the House of Representatives Committee on Petroleum Resources Downstream to direct the development of a national downstream logistics map, identifying priority product distribution corridors, critical bottlenecks, roads, bridges, depots, access points, channel depths, and specific infrastructure investments required to move Nigeria away from its current total dependence on truck hauling. The reactivation of the NNPCL pipeline and depot network is an important structural action available to address Nigeria's logistics vulnerability. The committee should prioritize a credible assessment and a phased rehabilitation plan for viable pipeline corridors with clear operating responsibilities and a commercial tariff structure. Rail freight should be piloted on corridors where sufficient recurring volumes, safe loading and discharge infrastructure, and viable tariffs can be demonstrated. The ongoing expansion of Nigeria's rail network presents an opportunity to develop rail-based petroleum product distribution for long-distance corridors significantly. The federal government should direct the NPA to urgently commence the dredging of channel routes serving major depot clusters, and the National Hydrographic Authority should update its navigational maps to support safe vessel passage at higher draft levels. We urge that the committee may want to embark on a troubleshooting effort to some of the stalled dredging projects, as the already approved plans only require strategic impetus for implementation and execution. I'm skipping so that I don't waste too much time. Dredging of waterways, channels enable larger vessels access to move more depot locations, improving economies of scale and reducing per unit supply costs. The Cabotage Fund, administered under the Federal Ministry of Transportation and Blue Economy, should be reviewed with a view to accelerating disbursement to qualifying indigenous ship owners who are currently excluded from meaningful participation in domestic petroleum product freight operations, a sector with an annual turnover running into hundreds of millions of US dollars. The NNPCL pipeline network, a vital part of Nigeria's strategic energy infrastructure, must be reactivated and repositioned to function as a primary distribution channel for petroleum products. The existing NNPCL depot network, if rehabilitated and strategically operated, could serve as the existing NNPC depot network, if rehabilitated and strategically operated, could serve as the initial pilot location for Nigeria's strategic reserve, given its national spread.
Hit the nail on the head. I will just focus on a few key points in order to fully explain. As a country, we do like having local refining. It is extremely important that we fully beneficiate our crude oil at home. This does not mean that we will not sell some crude when it is necessary, but does it mean that our local refineries will not refine crude from other countries where it is necessary? It also does not mean that we should buy in the filling stations only crude that is refined at home. At every point in time, the decision as to where products should be sourced from, also to, should be market-based. This is why we moved away from the subsidy regime that we had in the past to the current regime, which is market-based economics. So it is important, that we do have the capacity to refine at home, to sell at home, and to export. That is the second point we're trying to make, that there should be some flexibility in the supply chain linkages. Thirdly, it is extremely important that we resolve the problem of strategic stocks, strategic reserves. If you read the regulatory report, in the last few months, we have gone from having 20-day stock, sometimes below. I think the last report showed 19.5 day stock. Minimum stock that I would imagine for a country like Nigeria, even if I said 30 days, it is low. I think the target that was accepted was 60 days. That is what we are targeting. And it's extremely important because that strategic stock should also prevent us from suffering the price volatility that we have suffered. My colleagues have also spoken about the distribution facilities in the country. Most of the product is transported by road transport. It's extremely important that we understand the need for pipelines in the country. The pipelines that we have, the focus on rehabilitating them is extremely important. We know this will not be overnight, but as a strategic tool for the country, we cannot overemphasize its importance. While we are waiting for that to happen, we have what we call strategic trade corridors in the country, from Calabar all the way to the north, from Port Harcourt all the way to the north, from Warri all the way to the north. There are whole communities that survive along those corridors. Markets, industries, businesses, those corridors are the bloodlines, the blood vessels that supply the economies along those trade corridors. Those trade corridors should continue to function. And for them to function, it means that products must be received in Calabar, must be received in Port Harcourt, must be received in Warri, and travel along those routes all the way to all the corners of the country in the north. This is necessary now, particularly while we are working on the pipelines, which is our final destination. And we simply like to end by saying, local refining is absolutely necessary in the country. The government of Nigeria, however, must retain the regulatory control to decide when it should allow imports, where imports serves the country's interest best. This might be to reduce prices. You know, recently there was insufficient supply of LPG, for instance, in the country. By increasing the supply, the LPG prices have gone down. That is such a simple concept, such a simple explanation that I want all of us to hold on to. All of us cook at home. All of us have people who cook for us at home. Simply by allowing the imports at the appropriate time, the regulatory authorities were able to address the high cost of LPG and to help bring it down. That must remain the prerogative of the regulator of the government. So, we do want local refining. We want more local refining, more local refineries, and we also want the government to retain the control of whether we should have importation or not. Thank you very much. We have many initiatives in place, sir, with respect to road safety. In my association, all our trucks have satellite tracking. So we are in a position to tell how fast the truck is going, when the truck stops. Everything that happens, we can control. If the driver is overspeeding or driving recklessly, he can be reached while driving and asked to correct whatever he is doing. We also have trainings for our drivers. We have training school. We do our training ourselves. And every single driver must attend a refresher training at least once a year. So we do train our drivers and we do monitor them along the road. We have in our depots safe to load. No depot is expected to load any truck over the 45,000 liters. That is the regulation. And before any truck is allowed into the depot to load, safety checks are carried out by ourselves and the FRSC. We have a partnership with the FRSC who check every single truck at all our depots before they are allowed to load. So there is still much to be done. I cannot say that we do not still have accidents, but we are seriously engaged. The regulator, the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Regulatory Authority, also have a work group that meets once a quarter to track all the accidents that are happening. And I can say that the number of road traffic accidents has trended downwards as a result of this oversight and this overview. We are not yet at Uhuru. We haven't yet reached where we want to be, but there is a significant intelligent investment working with the regulators and ourselves in a self-regulatory effort to reduce the number of accidents. Unfortunately, because of the state of the pipelines, we have too many trucks on the road, and the solution, I think, is the pipelines. Once the pipelines are there will always be trucks for what we call the last mile, from the last depot to the filling station. But we will reduce the number of trucks on the road, and by so doing, we will reduce the probability of accidents. I've dealt with the issue of 45,000 liters, which is the maximum. I have talked about training of drivers. I will leave single supply source to DAPMAN.
On petroleum downstream initiative in establishing a direct engagement platform with critical stakeholders within the downstream petroleum industry. This consultative approach reflects the committee's commitment to evidence-based legislation, effective oversight, and the formulation of policies capable of addressing the complex challenges confronting Nigerian petroleum sector. There is no doubt about the fact that downstream petroleum sector remains one of the most strategic pillars of Nigeria's economy. Every liter of petrol, diesel, aviation fuel, kerosene, and liquefied petroleum gas distributed across the country sustain transportation, agriculture, manufacturing, healthcare, education, telecommunication, power generation, national security, and millions of livelihoods. As Nigeria undertakes history reforms under the Petroleum Industry Act, PIA, signed by President Muhammadu Buhari, the downstream sector stands at a defining moment. The emergence of large-scale of domestic refining, the liberalization of petroleum pricing, and increasing private sector participation provided unprecedented opportunities to transform Nigeria from a net importer of refined petroleum products into a globally competitive refining and distribution hub. However, this opportunity can only be fully realized through deliberate policies that foster fair competition, efficient regulation, robust infrastructure, affordable financing, and inclusive stakeholders' participation. The Independent Petroleum Marketers Association of IPMAN, established 5 decades ago, has remained the backbone of petroleum product distribution across the country. Our members operate in every state of the Federation and in thousands of urban and rural communities, often serving locations where other operators have little or no commercial presence. Through this extensive distribution network, IPMAN has constantly ensured the availability of petroleum products even under challenging economic and operational conditions. The association welcomes the effort of the federal government to rehabilitate public refineries, encourage private investors in refining, improve regulatory oversight, and promote a competitive downstream market. All these things I have explained them in the book that we have submitted to you. This initiative represented significant milestone towards strengthening Nigeria's energy security and reducing dependence on imported petroleum products. Nevertheless, substantial challenges remain: rising financing costs, multiple taxation, excessive regulatory charges, logistic constraints, inadequate storage infrastructure, limited access to refinery product, pipeline vandalization, foreign exchange volatility, and insufficient institutional consultation continue to affect efficient petroleum distribution and increase costs, ultimately borne by Nigerian consumers. All those things I have explained it in details, if you check. The memorandum has therefore been prepared not merely to identify existing challenges, but to propose practical solutions that will strengthen the entire downstream value chain. The recommendations contained herein seek to balance the interest of government, consumers, investors, refiners, marketers, and regulators, while promoting transparency, competition efficiency, and long-term sustainability. We thank Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu for removing subsidy completely and allows the marketers to take in charge. A key message of the memorandum is that the future success of Nigerian downstream petroleum industry depends on recognizing IPMAN as a strategic national partners, given our dominant roles in product distribution and nationwide retail infrastructure. Policies affecting downstream petroleum operations cannot achieve their intended objectives without the active participation of independent petroleum marketers. Accordingly, IPMAN advocates reforms that will: 1. Strengthen domestic refining while preserving healthy market competition. 2. Ensure direct, equitable access by marketers to locally refined petroleum products. Reduce avoidable regulatory costs that will inflate pump price. Improve access to affordable financing for downstream operators. Modernize petroleum transportation and storage infrastructure. All these things we have explained in details. Promote national energy security through strategic reserves. Encourage investment and innovation within the downstream sector. And institutionalize stakeholders' consultation in petroleum policy formulation. The association commends House Committee on Petroleum Resources Downstream for initiating this engagement and express confidence that committee's deliberation will contribute significantly to the continued transformation of Nigerian petroleum industry. IPMAN remains committed to partnering with the stakeholders in building a downstream petroleum sector that guarantees sustainable supply, affordable pricing, enhance investment, and improve economic prosperity for all Nigerians. My name is Alhaji Abubakar Megandi Shatima, National President, Independent Petroleum Marketers Association. So in a detailed form, all these things that I have said, we elaborate the way they can be achieved with our submission. Thank you very much.